All right, so it's 5 after. As people continue to show up, I'll try and keep an eye on that and let everybody in. So welcome everybody to the Multifamily Passive Cash Flow for Life meetup. We meet the fourth Wednesday of every month. When we're live, we do it at the Timbuktu restaurant in Hanover, which has amazing crab cakes. If you like crab cakes, they also have some wonderful food. And when we're out there live, we start like at 7, we network for a little while, we have a presenter, and then we network afterwards as well. So once we start going back to in person, please feel free to come out and join us there.
Which is going to be next month.
Next month. And we also live stream it on Facebook as well. And then today we have Brooks Healy, that is going to present to us. Brooks Healy is a very well-known commercial broker here in the local area, and I've got a little blurb on him that I want to share with you guys because I think it's important that you know, I guess, where the person's coming from that is actually presenting. So Brooks is a senior advisor for Harborstone Advisors. He's responsible for representing landlords in the disposition of multifamily assets, including mobile home parks throughout Maryland and now Southern Pennsylvania. Multifamily investment sales experience includes market rate apartments, voucher, project-based low income, and student housing. He utilizes a results-oriented approach driven by his attention to detail, work ethic, and putting his clients' needs first. He's been active in multifamily since 2014, so 8 years, getting close to a decade. Has successfully brokered in excess of 100 multifamily transactions. That's awesome. And prior to joining Harborstone Advisors, of which he's a founding member, he served as an advisor for the national brokerage firm SVN on their Mid-Atlantic apartment investment sales team. So Brooks, welcome. Thanks so much for coming out and joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's good to be back. It's been a couple of years since we all chatted together, but glad to be here and looking forward to having a good conversation.
Awesome. So I guess I've got a whole bunch of questions, and everybody, if you have questions as we go along, you want to type into the chat box. Nicole and I'll try and keep an eye on that. And then when there's a pause, we'll try and ask, and we'll also have question and answer at the end of the meetup as well. So I guess Brooks, you've been in the business, you're in the business now. Overall, how would you describe the multifamily and mobile home park market right now?
As James mentioned, our firm solely specializes in selling middle market multifamily assets, and that's how we would what we would describe as $1 to $25 million in deal size. We traditionally are selling regular market rate apartments, development opportunities, and as of lately, I've been getting a little more involved with selling mobile home parks. But the asset class multifamily in the last 2 years has been very strong, especially with the onset of COVID versus retail and office. Besides industrial, it's been a very good investment. But things are going well in this field. The downside right now is interest rates are ticking up, which hasn't gotten completely out of control yet, but it's putting a little bit of pressure on some of the numbers that we're seeing. So that's it in a nutshell for right now.
Okay, great. And then to your point, prices are a little bit high, cap rates are really low, and we'll see, I guess, if the interest rates kind of counteract that a little bit. But right now it's hard to find a good deal. So any suggestions or call outs on people when they want to buy something, how to buy intelligently?
From the buyer's perspective, it's obviously right now going to be, try to get the best interest rate, try to get the best debt terms. Sellers right now are aware that, they can probably push their prices a bit higher than where they would in a traditional market. So if there's a way to be a little more creative, if it's not on the dollar amount, if it's, other types of the deals, such as a shorter contingency period, we've seen people put up hard money from day one, which obviously shows the seller, your interest in the property. Obviously, it depends on how well you know it, but those are some things that you can try to do. But I would be very cautious and shop as many lenders that you can in order to find the best deal from an interest rate and debt perspective.
Okay. And then do you have certain lenders that you, like if somebody came to you and said, hey, I'm going to buy this property, you have certain lenders that you work with?
It's going to depend on market. for the most part. I mean, in Baltimore as a whole, and depending the deal size, but for anything kind of under, I'd say 2 million, there are some very good local lenders that you can work with. Above 2 million, you're going to probably look to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan programs, which tend to be very good debt terms.
Right.
They make you jump through a lot of hoops. But they're eager to kind of fill their pipeline because they didn't do as much business last year. So those would be, the two that we see the most frequently. We have seen a good amount of bridge and hard money type loans, and that was happening more frequently when kind of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae took a step back at kind of the onset of COVID. But they traditionally don't have the best terms, but depending your situation, it may be worth it.
Do you find that a lot of people looking for a lot of value add, and that's why they're looking for the bridge terms, or they're just like, something, I'm going to flip it in 3 years and I don't want to have to do a step down?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty much that. Like, look, they can come in quickly, renovate, units. It's going to depend on how much vacancy there is at the building, how quickly they can get that done, because ultimately that's going to impact, their exit price. But it's either that or waiting. At least from what we've seen, there was some delay with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae on releasing some of their reserve requirements. So people would get bridge debt with the hopes that they could refi through a better program with, obviously conditions being better, and Freddie and Fannie getting more aggressive, which you really got to have your pulse on the market to understand if that's worth doing. Okay.
And then do you find, I know there were reserves during the COVID time for Freddie and Fannie. Are they still asking for large, like 12-month reserves, or is that
no? Gone? Yeah, that is gone. They removed those in October. We've got a couple of Fannie and Freddie deals going right now, which, they're moving well, but, we didn't, up until October of 2021, we hadn't used Fannie or Freddie for any of the debt on any of our deals since March of 2020. And before March of 2020, Fannie and Freddie were funding at least 75% of our dispositions.
Wow. Okay. And then, we kind of touched on this a little bit. Do you think we're at the top of the market? Do you think it's still going up?
I think price points are still going to go up. I think if interest rates, continue to climb over the next 2-3 months, we'll start to see the pressure start to come on where price points will go down. Every deal that we're putting out, at least from the onset of this year, has been under contract within 30 days. We just put out a deal last week. It's already under contract. So things are continuing to move at the same kind of velocity. But yeah, I think there's still going to be some sellers that they can take advantage of kind of pushing the price point over the next couple months. Okay. And then, so what kind of, on average, I know it's different for different, A's, B's, C's and stuff like that, but can you give us kind of an overview of what the cap rates are, maybe in the Baltimore Metro and maybe a little bit further out? Yeah, for Baltimore as a whole, if you're in the core markets, Mount Vernon up to Charles Village, for a decent, B class property, you're seeing the cap rates in the mid six range. For kind of a gut renovated luxury building with top of market rents, we're seeing high fives, which is pretty low for Baltimore. As you would get outside of the city, you would start to see the cap rates, at least in still the city proper and kind of the Northwest and Northeast, you're going to see them in the high sevens. Everything used to be a little touch above 8, but they've come down below 8. And then as you get into the counties, the counties have been fairly attractive as well. There's not a lot of kind of middle market inventory for what we focus on in like Baltimore, Howard, or Anne Arundel. So when those deals do come out, we tend to see those cap rates compress even further because they are, a little more attractive assets. We sold a building in Howard County about a year ago that was like a 5.5 cap. It's 14 townhomes. Right. And then as you get it closer down into DC, you're going to see cap rates kind of be in that 6.5 range as well. Okay. I thought I saw a deal. I don't know I think it was you guys sent it out. It was like, I guess it wasn't one. That's what it was. It wasn't one. It was like a bunch of small multifamilies, but the cap rate, I think it advertised was like a 9.25 or something like that. Or do you remember that? Or was that somebody else? We sold it might have been a scattered site portfolio that was a little bit higher. I mean, I see somebody on this call that we sold a building to that was there we are. How's it going? That was essentially, it was duplexes, and the cap rate there was, I think, somewhere around 8, a touch below 8, as is, and I know they've done very well with the property and renovating and get high rents. So yeah, there's still a ton of value to uncover in a lot of these properties if people have some concern on the cap rate at the acquisition. Okay,
awesome. And then do you find, because of the way the rate, well, how do I ask this? Is everything going straight to market, or do you find maybe other brokers doing more pocket listings?
I can't speak for other brokers. I mean, our process, traditionally, because it tends to get the highest price for our client, the seller, is to put it on market. We have a couple kind of off-market listings from time to time, and it's kind of a situation where clients of ours will come to us and say, "Look, I'm not kind of there yet, but if you got 1 or 2 people that are qualified that you can put us in front of that could make a deal, then we're happy to do it." You tend to see more kind of the pocket listings for the larger properties, 150, 200 unit deals. Some people don't like to kind of advertise as much for those unless they are, more of an institution and they've got to, do things per their requirements or their bylaws.
Right. Okay, great. And I guess one of the things, we've got kind of a mixed crowd, right? So we've got some people, like, there's one guy that, has already been buying buildings. We've got others that are, sending out LOIs on buildings in different parts of the country. We have people that have bought smaller apartments, and we have people that are just getting started, and they come from 2 different backgrounds. Either A, they've been really successful in single family and now want to move to the next level. And then other people that are just like, something, I don't have to do single family. I can go right into multifamily. I don't have to go through that whole stepping process. So everyone's kind of at a different level. It's, what do you look for in a buyer when somebody calls you? Just like when I interview somebody, I've got my list of like 10 questions, and they're baseline questions that I ask everybody, that I'm looking for certain competencies when I hire somebody. So what do you look for to take a buyer seriously? Maybe that's the best way to say it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've done a lot of deals in and around Maryland, and we have a number of buyers that we've sold, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings to. So for folks that we don't, know on that level, we traditionally like to see, that you, 1, have an understanding of your own underwriting. 2, that you have an understanding of how you're going to finance the property. We are very in tune with the local lending markets and have great partners that we can refer things to. But it's always helpful to have someone that, knows a local lender, that is familiar with how we do business and how these buildings trade. But ultimately, we want to be able to tell a good story to our client, the seller, when we have an offer from somebody that we may not know. Is it they have experience with management? Do they have experience with a specific lender? Do they ultimately have a strategy with the property? And any way that we can provide additional assurance to the seller on your ability to close is extremely important. Some sellers, it's important for them to see proof of funds. So they'll say, "Look, I need to make sure that this person has adequate amount of money for, 1, the acquisition, and 2, if they're telling me they're going to renovate every unit, how are they going to get that money? So we're not, 3 months down the road into this deal and they say, 'Oh, look, our financing fell out because we didn't have things lined up.'" So we try to make it as smooth and streamlined as possible. And we're not afraid to do deals with new people. So, please don't ever get discouraged if you see a deal that you like and you can have, your lender lined up, your manager lined up, your plan lined up. It's always very helpful for us to know that.
Okay, great. And then what makes a buyer hard to work with? What are things that you've been doing this for a long time? What are you like? Oh, if they would just stop doing this, these 1 or 2 things, whatever it is, I would take them much more seriously.
The lack of communication is not always a good sign. So if you express a lot of interest in the property and and then all of a sudden you go dark, and then 2 days later you're like, well, wait a minute, I've either moved on, or so kind of that piece can get frustrating from the broker standpoint. Some folks can get very eager very quickly and go 110% into one thing, and then realize, wait a minute, this isn't kind of right for me. So kind of having your parameters set on what the ideal investment is, have it be the deal size, have it be the neighborhood, have it be the tenant base, and the product type is always very important. But we can typically navigate most issues. We've seen a lot of them, but the commitment to the deal, if you have a strong interest, and the commitment to wanting to close is very important.
Okay, great. Good call.
So Brooks, there's a question here about the cap rates.
Sure.
This is from Ken, and he wants to know, are the cap rates that you're talking about, are they based on actuals or performas, and how do you kind of treat that when you're presenting it?
Depending the deal, typically they're going to be on a pro forma basis. As a whole. I mean, there's everyone from a reporting standpoint can do some things differently. So are you looking at that as the past 12 months? Or are you looking at it for the whole, say 2020 or 2021? So, I mean, we try to keep it around the pro forma basis, and, I'm happy to share with you guys and the group, obviously our website, how we underwrite deals. We line our assumptions out pretty clearly. And typically we'll take them with the existing rent roll, the existing taxes, the existing insurance, some other, the existing utility bills. And then we'll add some pro forma figures for maintenance and things that are a little more routine. But generally that's the easiest kind of way to kind of on a broad scale show what the cap rates are. We'll get people that will have, say, for example, a portfolio of 20, 30 buildings, and for a small 8-unit building, they may run a payroll through. Well, if you own an 8-unit building, you don't need a salaried employee. So it's a little bit difficult sometimes, depending on who the seller is and where those numbers come from, what gives you the clearest picture. But the cap rates that I'm mentioning are kind of our underwriting once these deals close, based on the performance that we're doing that include some actual numbers.
Okay. So in terms of lenders, you talked about you work with quite a few lenders here locally. What do you think lenders are looking for from individuals? What kind of parameters are they looking for?
The lenders can typically work as quickly as the borrower. So they like to see that you have your personal financial statements lined up. They like to see that you have probably an organized schedule of your assets, specifically what real estate you own. They typically want to see how you're going to manage this. So are you going to manage this yourself? What management experience do you have? Or are you going to be contracting a third party, which they typically like to understand who that is. They'll want to see kind of your budget for kind of your year one for the property. They'll also want to understand kind of what your idea of kind of return requirements are. So what your cash on cash return ideally wants to be, and what your whole plan is with the property. I think as me not being a lender, we get a lot of these questions from lenders coming to us about certain people that we would refer to them. But I think those are important pieces to their puzzle. Okay,
awesome. And what kind of terms are you seeing in the last few, I guess, sales that you've had? What kind of terms are you seeing the lenders offering?
I mean, on the Fannie and Freddie side, we're doing 2 deals now that have seen some delays. They were supposed to close at the beginning of February and are now pushing into March. And since that time period, their rates have gone up like 80 basis points. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge, the interest rates that have spiked in the last month have hurt that deal. It's going to continue to move forward, but it's real money when that stuff happens. So that went from like a 3.6, 3.7 up to like a 4.4, 4.5 interest rate. Wow, and that's 7-year money. amortized over like 25 years.
Right.
On the retail side with like kind of more local lenders, you're traditionally seeing some more 10-year money amortized between 25 and 30 years. The last deal that we had was like I think that was around a 3.8, and then one was around a 4.2 interest rate.
Interesting. Okay. And that was a little while ago. It hasn't gone through that kind of bump.
It has, yeah. We haven't seen a huge bump there. We have another kind of 5 units townhome deal that's going through a lender we do a lot of business with, which I think they kind of locked their rate in early, okay. So they didn't have to take the hit when that right. When that sharp increase happened a couple of weeks back.
Right. So what do you see in terms of, it's interesting you talk about the delay. So what caused the delay?
We had some delays with inspections for the city dwelling license. Okay. We're working in a municipality in Southern PA that is pretty slow. They've been shut down, kind of similar to other areas, and right. They wouldn't send their inspectors out because there was a spike in COVID numbers. So the lender said, look, until you guys have the inspection certificate, then we can't close.
Right.
So even I know with Baltimore City, for example, they've pushed back, actually issuing dwelling licenses until I think July now. It was March. They continue to push it back. So those problems unfortunately do happen. It takes a cooperative buyer and seller to kind of navigate that. But unfortunately, that caused a big spike it didn't cause a spike in the interest rates, but an interest rate spike happened, and it's going to cost the buyer obviously some real money in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Nicole,
so I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I'm just interested, what are you seeing in terms of how lenders are handling all this increase in economic vacancy from the evictions being on moratorium?
Yeah,
what are they lending on properties that have problems with vacancies?
They are. I mean, every lender now is asking us for constant delinquency reports, on a monthly basis. So, a deal will typically take, 2 to 3 months to transact from contract to close. But we're seeing situations where lenders are kind of cutting the LTV a little bit because if a property may have, a higher level of delinquency than others. I'm not seeing them, really increasing the interest rate a ton. It's more or less saying, look, if this was a 75% LTV deal, now it's going to be 70.
So Fannie and Freddie used to have, at least I haven't bought anything in a couple years, so I'm not up to the date here, but they used to not really want to lend on things that they didn't consider stable, and part of stable being occupancy.
Yep.
So how are they handling that now?
No, they still, they need to typically see 90% occupancy for most of their deals. I mean, if it dips below that for, usually it's on a kind of 45, 30-day basis, then they will cut the LTV. Okay.
Thanks. Sorry, James. Thank you.
No, it's funny because I was just asking if you had any questions. So good timing. All right. So what else we got here? You talked a little bit about this. So in terms of what people should have on their team if they're going to move forward. So you talked a little bit about you need to have a lender, right? You need to have, I guess, a property management company. Is that right?
I mean, it all depends the deal size and ultimately what you want to do. I mean, if you've got the ability to manage yourself and be lean and cut some of those expenses and paying a management fee, it's completely doable. Most lenders are going to want to understand, how you're going to do that and what you're going to devote to it. But if you do go the property management route by getting a third party, it's always good to have them, lined up, understanding kind of what your ultimate goal is with the property. Obviously, it's best to interview a handful of property managers because all of them do different things. And depending your situation and the property type and how involved you want to be, some can cater to that. But yeah, management's a big piece in the acquisition.
Okay, great. In terms of, I guess we talked a little bit about the fact that some of these deals are taking a little bit longer, right? So that notwithstanding, what kind of timeframes are you seeing for deals when they're kind of written up? Is it, 30 days due diligence, 30 days to close? Is it 15 and 45? Is it 30 and 90? What is most common?
Yeah, typically for kind of a traditional multifamily deal, say under 5 million, it's usually a 30 to 45 day due diligence period. Most folks try to include their financing in that to be competitive. So as people say, look, I have a 40-day study period, a 45-day study period, which also includes my finance contingency, and then I'll close within 15 to 30 days after that. So typically it's between 60 and 75 days. And that, again, is a piece of the offer that, depending your situation, depending who your lender is, depending how quickly you can do your due diligence. If you want to get competitive, sellers typically like to see a shorter contingency period. That way they know within, say, instead of having 30 days, you're down to, 2 weeks, that they haven't, you'll have hard money at that point and they have some assurance of close. So that is traditional for like development type stuff. It's usually longer because, you've got to, confirm the zoning and do various other, studies and jump through hoops with, the government, depending where the property is, that impact ultimately what you're going to build.
And do you see a lot of
So
contracts?
you're not seeing increase in underwriting from the lenders?
As far as timing is concerned?
Uh-huh.
Slightly. I mean, most banks are coming to us once with their client, once they have it under contract, and saying, look, we're going to probably add a 2-week extension because if there's any delay with appraisals and the lender. So knock on wood, every lender has told us that, but we haven't really seen any delays from the appraisal side. Most folks, as long as they're organized and can commit to getting their lending lined up within 45 days, have been able to do it.
Okay.
Do you find that some of the contracts come in with extension clauses just in case something like this happens because we're kind of living in a crazy time?
More often than not, as of the last 2 years, yes. Most typically have at least one clause that they'll have the ability to extend with, if they don't have anything that says they were going to put up additional deposit money, usually sellers are looking for that. So usually it's a 30-day extension with an additional deposit.
Okay. So, and is there a percentage number for that deposit, or just give us 20 grand and we're good to go?
Yeah, it varies. I mean, traditionally sellers like to see the earnest money deposit be at least anywhere between 3% and 5%, depending how aggressive you want to be. That can obviously, look good on your behalf to the seller, but depending the deal size, usually it's between 25 and 50 grand additional. Okay.
All right. And then when people are sending in LOIs, what do you want them to include on the LOI? Do you want them sending LOIs? Do you want them to call you instead? What are you looking for?
No, LOIs are fine. I mean, traditionally if you have interest in the building, we want you to walk the building. We want you to meet with us. We want you to see it before submitting an offer. But LOIs can be fairly basic, just to include all the deal terms. So the purchase price, the deposit amount, any contingency period, have it be a study period or a finance contingency, your time to close, and then ultimately what's going to happen from a transfer and recordation cost standpoint. Is that going to be split? Are you going to pay it? Is there going to be a unique structure to the contract? We would like to know all those items.
Okay. It's funny, we went through 2 pages with the questions pretty fast. So I guess you got any funny stories, stuff that's happened, or some interesting deals that you've worked with?
I mean, most deals are all pretty interesting. I mean, that's what's unique about the business. So they're not all the same. They're not, very cookie cutter, which is fun. We had another deal where we found at the kind of the last minute that there was a underground storage tank. So that delayed the deal. And so you'll see things like that. You'll find out, depending each situation, a little bit more about each of the tenants in the building, which sometimes you want to know about, sometimes you don't.
Right.
But yeah, nothing that truly sticks out. We've been, at least the last, I think since the last time I was on here, we've transacted a number of buildings, and they've all been kind of a variety of shapes and sizes. Sometimes the smaller assets, which could be worth 4, 5, 600,000, are 10 times harder to sell than a $20 million building. So it's a very unique business.
Great. And
How
then,
about if we open it up to a few questions?
Yeah,
James?
that's fine.
Yep, go ahead. Everyone is, if you want to unmute or you want to tap into the chat box, go ahead. And actually, Chris has a question. So what part of, whoops, where'd it go? Hold on, somebody else just typed in a question. So what part of the real estate cycle do you believe we are in, and how long will we stay in it?
I mean, I think where we sit currently, I think we are still, I guess, part of in the expansion part of the cycle until interest rates really kick up. I haven't seen any slowdown of sellers wanting to sell and buyers wanting to buy. We haven't seen a ton of distress in the market, meaning that banks are coming to us saying, look, we've got 15 buildings, you guys got to get us out from under. We do work with lenders. We do work with, third-party servicers that are involved with that. The volume of their business has not increased. So yeah, I think we're still in a very good spot. I think you can still find deals, even as a buyer, that have a good amount of meat on them. You're going to be paying a little bit more now than you would maybe a year or 2 years ago, but you can still make it work.
So, and then in terms of someone lives in the Baltimore metro area, do you have any areas that you think have most future potential?
I mean, Baltimore as a whole, as most people know, is pretty block by block. The downtown neighborhoods have always been very steady and strong, and their rents are continuing to increase. An area where you can still get some value, and there's a lot of good moving parts that I would see even on the smaller end would be like Station North. So that's just north of where the Penn Station is, and the redevelopment that's going to be happening there. So that's going to help that neighborhood a lot. You've already seen a good amount of development happening there, and cleaning up of some rundown buildings. But that's a pretty unique neighborhood. And Mount Vernon and Charles Village typically have most of the inventory, because they are the old homes that have been chopped up into 5 to 10 units. So you can still find some decent deals there, and it's a very safe area to be. What about in the counties, the surrounding counties? Surrounding counties, I mean, like I said, Baltimore County doesn't have a ton of kind of what we focus on. It's typically larger institutional deals. You can typically find like a mixed use building that has a retail space and then some apartments above. We've sold a handful of buildings in Carroll County out towards like Westchester and Manchester. You see some kind of smaller apartment buildings there, which are good markets. Your rent growth isn't as big as it is in the city. Your taxes are lower, but you've got a very strong tenant base. So areas like Westminster, Manchester, Sykesville are good areas to be in. There's not a ton of inventory in Howard County, unfortunately, because it's a very good market. Mm-hmm. But we've had some couple sales there, which have just been very high price per door, a ton of activity, just because you can't find, it's a rarity of the asset. Right. If you got into PG and Montgomery counties, areas like College Park, Hyattsville, we sold one in just north of Hyattsville. That was a pretty unique building. All of those price points are continuing to go up as well. Montgomery County is very pricey too. Right. Okay. If you're brand new, what would you recommend be the very first step to get started? We get all your finances lined up and speak with the lender. I would, understand what your return requirements are. I would understand what you're ultimately trying to get out of this, understanding how much money you can put down, and ultimately what's the price point that you could buy at, and then where ultimately do you want to be? Some folks would, see a property that they like from afar, don't really know the market, don't really know the neighborhood. And then, 2-3 years later, they're like, look, I haven't been able to do anything here, and I'm in a tough position. So getting your kind of eyes and hands on the neighborhood is very important. And then understanding from a financial perspective what you, one, can afford, and two, what your ultimate plan and budget would be to, get as much out of the property as you possibly can.
Okay, great.
So I would want to add to that. This is Nicole here, who kind of been. So I would also say that if you're fairly new getting started, that some of the lenders that are more likely going to be helping are, small local or regional banks that lend in certain areas. Credit unions, savings and loans. Those places are dealing with people who don't have a lot of experience and are buying smaller assets like 5 to 20 units, things like that. And I would wonder, Brooks, if you would agree with that or not. Finding a lender.
I would, and again, the deal size is gonna really, at least what you can put down and ultimately what you can afford is going to contradict your deal size, and then the deal size you can discuss with a variety of different lenders. Have it be like Nicole said, a local bank, a savings bank, or a credit union, and then either hard money lender on the short term, or even going up to Fannie and Freddie, even life insurance companies on the larger scale. So there's a variety of avenues, but if you're just starting out, it's having a good banking relationship with somebody is very important.
And we've actually got some lenders that we work with, some local lenders that we work with. So if you guys need some names or contact information, just shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to send that out. All right. So how does the process change for, I'm not sure if I understand this question, for those of us using private money as opposed to hard money or traditional loans? I don't know if that's a syndication question or, well, maybe this is what they're asking. So if someone's going to syndicate a deal, they're going to get, let's say it's a small $2 million deal, and they're going to pull together, 10 investors, at 50 grand a piece. If that math works, I guess it would have to be a little bit more, maybe 20 investors. And they come to you and go, okay, listen, I got my investors lined up. I don't have a proof of funds for, $500,000. How do you deal with that?
I mean, it's very important for us to know where the money is coming from. I mean, most sellers will want to know that, and sellers understand that there are syndications. Sellers understand that there's, individuals that buy buildings. They understand that kind of buyers come in all shapes and sizes. But understanding kind of like, look, if you could tell us you raised a fund, you could show us how this fund was raised, and ultimately what your goal is. That's helpful. But yeah, if the most important piece was even be taking that fund or that syndication. And if you went to a local lender, yeah, it's going to take some underwriting time. Typically hard money and even private money can move a lot quicker. Obviously that comes at a higher interest rate. So It's all a matter of how you want to do it and what makes the most logical sense for getting your return requirement and ultimately your end goal.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people don't do that. They don't check out their financing first. And they figure, okay, I'm just going to make a bid on this property, but never having sat down and said, wait a minute, I'm bidding on a $2 million property. I'm going to have to come up with, 500, 600, 700 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Where's that money coming from?
Yeah. And also accounting for the closing costs and other transactional fees, attorney fees, and things of that nature are very important because It's, obviously if you're going to syndicate money, you're dealing with a large pool of it, and every dollar in every situation does count, but Those are a little more important because those are your investors and it's hurting your returns.
Right. And for everybody out there that's new, obviously you need a really good underwriting sheet. We obviously have ours, but use somebody else's. But the nice thing about actually sitting down with an actually full-fledged underwriting sheet is you really look at the numbers, and the more you look at the numbers, the more you'll understand the process and understand what all the costs are, hidden, not hidden, and then what kind of returns you're going to get if you do bring other people in to see even if the deal is worth it before you reach out to somebody like Brooks to say, hey, something, I want to put an LOI in. Just make sure you've done all your homework first.
The problem is you don't always have all of the numbers you need before you can do before you put in an LOI. You don't have all of the numbers to really do a full underwriting. Would you agree with that, James?
No, James.
No, either one of you.
I mean, for the brokerage side, I mean, we try to do a really good job with getting buyers and folks a ton of information from the get-go to give you
Okay.
enough start. We will always provide a current rent roll. We'll always provide you the tax bills. We'll always provide you most of the utility bills if they're available, and the insurance costs. So understanding the market and again, how from a management perspective you would run a building is also very important. A lot of the times when we sell properties, there's severe management issues. There are managers that are not local. There's managers that are local and just don't care. They're taking just a 10% cut each month. So understanding what value you can bring to the property and what value that you can enhance the property from not only a physical or a renovation standpoint to boost the rents, but also from the managerial side. How much more efficient can you be? And if you look at, say, for example, their water bill, and it's $10,000 a month on a 4-unit building. Well, what does that mean? Either there's a leak, or you got something going on that just no one's watching. So you can, yes, justify and make an offer based on a very basic amount of information if you have a very good grasp on your underwriting and knowledge of how you would run the property. And we give you plenty of information, at least on our deals, and we try to get you to that point where if we can provide the trailing figures and they're readily available, we'll give them to you. Some sellers are just simply not organized.
Yeah.
And we'll get a income and expense sheet handwritten on a napkin sometimes. And it's like, what does this mean? So, you can, and a lot of that does come with practice. So seeing these deals and then ultimately following up with them on where they traded versus, kind of what your number was is also good practice.
You guys do a really good job about that.
I would agree with James about underwriting, particularly on the exits, if you're even thinking about hard money, because the exits become real tough with hard money, because you're not going to be able to refinance most commercial property for 18 months or so after you've bought it, because they're going to want to see some performance. And so holding a hard money loan that long can be really tough.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I will say, Brooks, I've looked at your website and a couple of different properties I had an interest in, and you guys do a phenomenal job in terms of all the information you provide. So thanks so much for doing that. It makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to be as transparent as possible. And there's nothing worse than getting involved in a deal and something not being there that you thought was there, or the rent roll is $10,000 less than what they originally told you. So we try to keep things very clean. You'll notice if you look at our website, we have a secure document vault which organizes all the documents that we can provide, from the offering memorandum to the rent rolls, the trailing figures, any billing history. So we try to be very complete with that. And unfortunately, all sellers are not the same. So we can go from having a seller that's extremely organized to having every month broken out on every expense basis to someone that hasn't done their books in 6 months. So there's a lot of ways to pick up, technically some fat in the deal and be more efficient, and to help your bottom line if you do become the next owner.
And then Aaron asks, where's the best place to research or find available properties?
Again, it's going to depend your market. So, I mean, us personally, we have our website, which has all of our listings. We put all of our listings on CoStar, Crexi, LoopNet. Those are the big kind of commercial listing services. So those are helpful. I mean, if you're just trying to get a bare bones understanding of kind of the area and certain buildings, you can do a lot of research from, various tax websites that the state offers and finding details on that front. But if you're looking for on-market stuff, those are the big ones.
Okay. And you guys list everything on Crexi and LoopNet as well?
We put all of our listings on Crexi, LoopNet, CoStar, and of course our website. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And what's your website again?
Harborstoneadvisors.com.
And we'll send that out to everybody along with Brooks's contact information as well. All right, a couple more questions in here. So Ken asks, what is the best way to say to a broker, thank you, but the returns are not there, without burning bridges or being offensive?
Thank you, but the returns are not there. I mean, look, I appreciate it when people are blunt with us. And
Right.
look, I know every deal is not going to be for everybody, and our team knows that. So look, it's helpful when you provide feedback that, hey, look, I like the location, I like the building, but I can't see myself getting what I need out of this, so I'll wait to the next one. That being blunt and honest is perfectly fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. How do brokers view creative finance strategies to get the deal done? Example, seller carry, master lease, etc.
It's very rare that we'll ever do a deal that has this, seller financing or a lease back. Most sellers tend to view that as probably somebody that doesn't have the financial capability to hold a property. We've very rarely gotten into situations that a seller will say, okay, I'm willing to take back $100,000 for 3 to 6 months. If it's going to happen, it's going to be very short term. Most sellers that we work with really shy away of it because ultimately their goal is to sell the property. They don't want to be involved with it anymore.
Right. Okay. Makes total sense. What other questions? Nicole, do you have any questions?
I think he's doing great.
Brooks, I have a question. This is Shike.
Hey, how are you?
How's it going? So speaking with a couple of lenders, they tend to have some of these prerequisites in terms of auditing some of the financial documents. How do you take care of that when the seller, like you mentioned, may not be as organized and they may not kind of keep some of those records? What does that look like?
I mean, most lenders will always ask for trailing 12 months. So, I mean, at a bare minimum, we try to get that from our sellers. I mean, we've worked with people that, especially some of the older crowd that does not really work with computers, and they've had a building for 60 years and they handwrite things. So whatever we can provide and whatever clarity we can, great. I mean, most of the time dealing with lenders, you got to have a conversation with them that, like, look, if this is not available, here's how I would run it. Here's where their rent is, but market rents are X. So it's kind of talking them through the deal, which typically makes them more comfortable. And we do it all the time. We're happy to be involved with any of those conversations you may have because we obviously know the market pretty well. But we will try at kind of a bare minimum to at least get 12 months of income expenses. If we can't, we can usually get it 3 to 6 months. So yeah, that sometimes they just have to bite the bullet and work with it and have enough trust in you as the borrower that you can execute on your budget and on your plan.
Gotcha.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Anybody else? You all have the ability to unmute if you just want to speak as opposed to typing it in. All right, well, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Brooks, anything else you want to share with us?
No, I mean, you guys know where to find me and find our team. If there's any specific questions to certain assets and kind of what you guys are seeing, I'm happy to speak with you on and refer you to anybody that I may know on this side of the world as far as lenders, real estate attorneys, property management companies. But we've got a wide variety of listings. Everything's accessible on our website, and it's good to get in and kind of review that stuff if you're wanting to do more research and ultimately down the road find something. But happy to always give you guys a pulse on the market, give you guys our insights, what we're seeing, and again, happy to answer any questions.
Brooks, I've got your email as bhealy@harborstoneadvisors.com. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. And if you guys we have a mailing distribution list that sends out all of our deals. If you go to our website, you can sign up on it or shoot me an email and I'll get you on it as well. So we have typically a couple of deals that go out a month. We've got some new inventory coming over the next couple of weeks, including a garden asset in Dundalk, which is going to be 64 units. We've got a larger deal in Mount Vernon coming in about 2 weeks, which is 96 units. On the smaller side, we've got some other, 5 to 10 unit deals in kind of Midtown Baltimore that will be hitting the market as well. So there's a wide variety of things that we work with, and you guys are welcome to take a look.
And Terry's asking what the website address is. Terry, I actually pasted his email address on there. So it's the last part of his email address, but I think he's going to type it in as well for you.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. And we'll edit this video and put it up on our YouTube channel. And at the same time, we'll email everyone, whether you're on meetup.com or you're on Facebook or you're on our mailing list. We'll send everybody a link to the replay. And we'll also have obviously all of Brooks's information on there as well. So you can reach out to him, take a look at his website and all the different stuff. They do really good quality work. I got to say, Brooks, you guys really are outstanding at what you do. You're very good. Some brokers out there are okay, but you guys do a really good job. You're a class act. So we really appreciate all you do for us.
Thanks. We put a lot of effort into that. And obviously it makes people see our deals a little bit better. We've got a full marketing team that likes to really paint the picture of each deal to give everyone a good insight to it. But no, we appreciate that comment and compliment there.
All right. Well, everyone's saying thank you and thank you for the information. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Well, go ahead. Nicole, did you want to say bye?
That's what I said. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, Brooks.
Thanks,
I think you're
everybody.
already gone. Bye, everybody.
Yep, take
All
care.
right. Bye-bye. Everyone take care. Thanks again, Brooks.